that is the 4 regression assumptions clause. So we saw that our model is successfully passing those or not breaking those assumptions clause. Now what we have left is like we want to do the prediction. So that's what we have built our model, right? So before we do the prediction, we do all of these stuffs carefully, each and every step. So since from the EDA or right from the beginning of the process, when you do the model building, each and every step is very crucial and you have to do it with utmost care. Else, in somewhere in between, or at least in the production, when you deploy this, your model will fail. So that's gonna set back some few dollars to your organization and it will all be a mess. So by not having all of those, we have to do all of these things very carefully. Okay, so now what we do today is we have two parts, that is say we have a coin and on the one face of the coin we have this prediction and stuffs, and on the other side what we'll be doing is we will be exporting this to a web application. Sounds interesting? Yes. So we will be doing that activity also, and we'll see what is the power of Python in that domain as well for deploying web application. Okay, so we are on to the first page, that is we want to do the prediction. So before doing the prediction, what we will do is we will check for the mean squared error. So mean squared error is nothing but the MSE, that is a standard we check for the errors which are there. Uh, Although we have done with the calculation of the residual from the B test and the B predicted, but mean squared error is one such way by which you can also test the errors which are there present in your model. So mean square error is nothing but you add all the residuals and you do the square of those, and what do you get, that is mean squared error. So directly without writing any hard code or boilerplate code, directly from the sklearn library you have sklearn metrics, and from that you have a package that is mean squared error, and from that you have a method that is mean squared error, and you pass the B test and the B predicted. So remember, while calculating the residuals we subtracted these two, but this is another way that I'm showing that how you can calculate your error, that is from mean squared error. You can call by this way, and if I just run this cell, it is taking some time. Okay, yeah, so it has got the error that is 0.14, so it is approximately same like how we calculated for residuals. Okay, so these are some things that we want to do, and this is the prediction thing that we are going to do. So since in our results it all contains our model, so we use that model to predict. So how we do the prediction? So since we have 31 different predictor variables contributing to our prediction for the model, we have to pass all of those. So this is one crucial thing that you would think like you have to pass all of these things one by one. Why? Because I would say like since you have trained your model from the beginning by making sure like it has to learn each and every parameters. So there, instead of 31, you have not trained with 20 or 10 parameters. So when you try to predict, you have to give all the inputs so that it will give the correct prediction. Else it will throw error. The error what it will throw in this case is it will throw some dimension error, that the dimension is not matching. And how we do that is by using the NumPy arrays. So in an array, like in a one single flattened array, we pass all the 31 different predictor variable values. So this is for one record. So say for here, since A contains my training data, what I will do is I'll do a dot tail. So in this a dot tail, I'm interested in this thing. So what I'm doing is to my model, I am trying to predict what will be the total cases if I give this particular record. That is the new cases, then the new cases smoothed, then total deaths, new deaths, and mind you, it has to be in the same way how it is represented in your data frame, not even how it is there in the Excel, because after you have imported your Excel, you did some pre-processing to your uh, data frame. And why I'm saying this, because since if your CSV file or Excel file could be tab separated, or it can be some time series data as well. So there, in that case, what data format or how your value is present in your data frame, you have to pass in the same way to predict, else it will not understand and it will throw error. So say for example, most of these values are floating point values, and there is one value which contains a string, that is e plus 09. So you have to pass in such a way that it conforms to your data frame. So if I try to predict this, that is results.predict, it will give an array. So it contains some values 7175880 point some values are there, that is on the floating side. So what you give as input, that is an array, and you get back as an array. So this is one way. And the second way, what how you can do is, like, you can create some sample distribution, or from a sample you can pass this value as a prediction input, and then it will give some distributions or some plot, so how well your target and the predicted variable is performing. So now how do we check this? So for checking this, what we do is, since all our original data contains in A, or um, if I look for here, uh, no, it should be in India cases. So if I have India case, and if I look at this, so we have given this entry, that is 21503. So if we check with this, that is 21503. So you have, that is the total cases here, that is 7175880.0. So something is there after that. So it is approximately predicting, and there are some values according to this model, but the integer part, it's exactly the same. So that means our model is predicting it correctly, at least the integer part. On the floating part, there can be some minor ups and downs, but that's not the issue. Now you can check with the different values. So that is the hurdle with this model, is that it requires all the values to be passed in order to predict. So it's not like you pass two variables, or just two or three values and you can get the total cases. It's not like that. We have not built the model in that way. So while training the model, we have given all the 31 different columns or 31 different predictor variables in order to predict it accurately. So what our goal is, the accuracy. So we are getting that accuracy by seeing what the output is. So you can realize what the output that we are getting, that is this value and this value. Now, one thing that I want to tell you is, like, for most of the people who are learning data science, or uh, to other people who know about this machine learning stuffs and deep learning stuffs, or other people, what they think is, like, the role of model building, or the area where we do the prediction and all this stuffs ends here. But this is not the story of Python. at least in data science you have a much more universe to go. So currently we have seen only one part of model building, and before that we saw EDA and all the quality checks and so on. So now as a person, if you are a machine learning engineer or so, so if your knowledge is just to like creating a model, a very good model just for prediction, that's not completely correct. To some extent, according to you, it is correct. But now just think from your side, this model is locally to you. Now, if you want to give it to some other person, or if you want to share across to some community, how will you do that? So for that, you need to do a portability, that is called as porting. So now what we do is, since we have all these things done, that is EDA, then model building, then regression checks, and finally we did the prediction. After this, so we are sure like it is estimating or giving the accuracy score correctly. Now that what we do is, we want to put in some manner such that it can be used on different platforms, or it can be cross compatible. So for that what we do is, we will try to make a file of this, that is a model. So a model will be representative in a small file. So in Java, if you know from the Java programming background, we when we used to play games, we have this JAD files or jar files. So similar is the concept. Here we do that with the help of pickle. So we have learned what a pickle is, that is for object serialization. So pickle does the same thing. It will contain all your model, all your EDA stuffs and all those things in one single file, that is a small file. So that is a pickle file. So what now we'll be doing is, we will be importing a pickle library, and in that we have pickle.dump. We have seen this. So I have a video dedicatedly made for pickle. So I'll just put the link in the description or on the cards up. Make sure you check that if you don't have a pretty idea of what the pickle is and why we do pickle in Python, or by this at least you will get to know why we require a pickle in Python. So to this what we give is the results. So results contain the model, or when we did the fit, that is model.fit. So that is everything contained in our results. And what you see here, that is the name of my pickle file. So I first do it in a open way. So like first you have to open that file, and then you have to do some changes before dumping. So this is how you call, that is open, and inside that what you give is name of your pickle file. You can give any name you want. I have followed one convention in this. So the first thing which you see, that is a regressor. So since we have built a linear regression model, we want to have a regressor. So that is REGOR, regger. And after that, GP stands for the global pandemic. And then this is for 20, that is, it represents the year, that is the last two digits. And then this is the first version, that is V1. And then there is an extension, that is .pkl, which stands for pickle. So this is how the naming that I've given for this. You can change this according to your convenience. So why version 1? Because tomorrow if you require any fine tuning, or if you want to do any modifications to your model, then that will be your second build or second pickle file. So you can keep the name changing, or you can retain the old file also. Like if you want to do any bug tracking or any other stuffs for project management, if you want to do, then you can do in that way also. And what you see after this is, that is WB. WB stands for write binary. So everything when you dump onto a pickle file, it will be in a binary file. You won't see this codes that you see on this notebook or what you have done there. So everything will be represented in zeros and ones, so that are called as pickle objects. So that basically you can transport to some other machine that is on a Linux system or a Mac system. So that's where this comes into picture, that is cross compatibility. So what I do is I dump these results onto this pickle file in a write binary mode. And if I just go ahead and just run this, and if I look onto this part, so you can see that it has generated a pickle file which consists of my uh, regression model. So now this particular pickle file is as good as running all of those things which you have done above, that is the EDA and all of those stuffs. So this single file is enough to do your prediction. So this is what the power of Python programming language is. You can do the production activity which is uh, or which cannot be done with other programming or scripting languages. So this is the flexibility that Python gives. So it is that important to know for data science. Okay. So then what we do is, just for testing whether our regression file or the pickle file works or not, I'll just open this, that is by using the load method, and I open this pickle file in write binary, and I'll write those things which are earlier in pickle objects. So write binary will convert back onto a scripting way, and it is put into results back, that is on the stats models which we have seen. And then I'll just do the prediction again. So this is not the same thing which we do here. So this is as a result of pickling and unpickling. So here what we did is called as the pickling process, and here what we do is, that is the unpickling process, and from the unpickled data we do the prediction. So let's go ahead and just run this. We can see the output that we got is exactly the same as to this. So that means our pickle model is working. So that is perfectly fine. That is from the scripts that we obtained, and from the model that we obtained, both are exactly the same. Now what after this? So your story doesn't end here, or the role of Python still is there in the picture. So Python is a hero throughout this data science. So now since you have this pickle model, now what you want to do is you want to do the production of this. So for doing the production, you need to build a web application or some mobile application, then it can be productionized. So it is correct. So now what you want to do is, you can go here, you can see these three dots, you can download this pickle file which consists your machine learning model or the regressor. Now we won't be seeing this collab henceforth after this. So everything now will be done onto this Visual Studio. So this is one platform that is a very good platform for building any Flask applications or for doing any kind of projects. So this is one such editor. So I said, like, when we will be covering different programs in Python, we'll be also looking into the different code editors that are available, so that you get to know, like, what are there on, or on which platforms or frameworks you can basically write this, or how is like the cross compatibility across different operating systems can be done. So this same thing you can do in Linux, like Visual Studio can be put in Linux or it can be put in Mac, and most of the developers use this. So for, like, if you have a JavaScript developer, then they do the Node.js, then Vue.js, React.js, everything on this studio. So but since most of them don't know, like, this can be used for build Flask application. So this is the first encounter of how we'll be using Visual Studio for building our Flask application. Okay, so now before we begin, or before I explain what the actual application is, that is what we will be doing is we will be building a regressor application. So that is the name of this regor app.py. So this entire thing is written in Python. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to choose any directory. So from where you started this. So before that, if you are new to this Visual Studio, you'll install this, and you will get a pop-up. So in the pop-up, how it will basically looks like is you will have a welcome page like this. So after you see this, click on the open folder right here. So it will open a directory path. So here I have all my stuffs in this, that is documents. So in this documents, I have created a folder that is Flask app. So in this Flask app, I will be creating all the templates and all the files which are necessary for running my web application, or that is the Flask application. So this is one thing when you have to do when you initially install the Visual Studio, and before you do the coding activity or for building your application. So in Flask app, I have different folders. So I'll explain each and every steps one by one. So now I have done that activity. I'll just open this here. So this is my directory where my Flask app is, and inside this, so first what you want to do is you have to set this path. Obviously, if you did the same way like I have instructed, you will be in this particular directory, that is the Flask app or the directory which you create. So in this, what you need to put is, first you have to put your pickle file which you have got from your Jupyter notebook or from the Google Colab. So once you put this, you can see the directory tree here, that is the navigation. So you can refresh this, and you can see like it will be popped here, that is the pickle file. Okay, so now once you do this, what you need to do is you need to create a Flask application. So it is very simple. You need not take much of the worries of how we can build a Flask application. It's not that difficult. So most of the parts, when you reuse the code, it remains same. Just here and there, when you have database connectivity with SQL Alchemy or SQLite databases, so there you need to change some of the things. And most of the databases that goes well with Flask application is SQL Alchemy or SQLite. So SQLite resides inside SQL Alchemy. So that database is most compatible for doing all the transaction logs or checking how your application performs. So currently I have not connected this to database or SQLite, just for demonstrating how the entire workflow from your model building to deployment is. Not the deployment, actually it will be put in a web application. For deployment, we have some other stuffs that we'll cover later. Okay, so first thing, like this is the Python file. So if you want to create any file to this, probably you will see this file directory on this side. What you can do is you can click this and create new file and name this as regorapp.py, or the name of the application you have to put, or the Flask application, and just put the .py extension. So first thing what I do is uh, whenever you create any new workspace, so if you have worked with the Eclipse library also, there you have the concept of workspace. So this is also a workspace or explorer where you can do coding. So whenever any new application comes, so you have different modules or different user written libraries also comes. sometimes. So that is another dependency which comes into picture. So since we have not created any library from the scratch, what we have is we have predefined libraries that we have used uh, while model building on our Colab notebook. So just keep in mind, whenever you build a Flask application, all the modules which you are going to use in your Flask app here on this particular editor, you have to basically import that. So first I'm importing numpy as np, then statsmodels.api as sm because my results resides inside that, then statsmodels.tsa.api as smt. Then important thing is from Flask import, this is the main thing. So this you might not have when you do it initially. So it is a, as you can see, it is a model Flask, a micro framework based on Workzoic. So it's extensively documented and follows best of the practice patterns, like what is the standard coding practice that you have to do, and there are different licenses for this. So what you want to do is you want to import the class that is Flask, and then there are some other methods or variables, or in fact libraries that you want, that is request. Then one is JSONify or JSON. Then there is a render template for rendering different graphics on your browser. So it is basically used for that. And finally, the pickle that we have seen. So first, how do you proceed with this? So first, this is the very standard line. So this line remains constant for any of the application unless you are changing this name of app. So instead of app, if you put anything, you have to keep in track like you have changed this, else somewhere in between it will not compile or it will throw error. So this is the name of my Flask application, that is app. So later this has a very vital role when you want to deploy onto some cloud service. So just stick to name of the app unless there is a strong requirement to change the name of this. Okay. So first, from the class Flask, I write the name. So that is a by default string. So this all, everything comes under the OOPS concept, that is the object oriented programming. We have covered some of the concepts in that, how we can create classes and objects, and the various interplay of different objects we have seen. So this is not a new thing. So I assume like you know all those stuffs before watching this, else this will be new to you. Okay. So then what I do is I'll create a variable that is this results variable is not the variable that we have created in the Colab notebook. This is new one. And then I'll call the load method from pickle, and this is the same thing which we have seen from the Colab thing, and we have put into results. So results contain all the or it consists of the pickle file which is in read binary format. So we are opening and putting onto results. Now comes this part. So this thing you are familiar, or I suppose you are familiar with this. So these are nothing but decorators. We have seen what are decorators. I have a dedicated video for decorators as well. What is its purpose in object oriented programming? So here what we use is whenever we want to create a Flask application, we will be using @app.root or route. So this is basically for redirection of your URL on which directory it is basically. So from there it finds like this is a forward slash. So that is the root directory or the parent directory, and inside this I have a object. I have a method that is home, or a function. So inside function, I want to return the template, or I want to return something. So what I want to return is I want to display the index page or the HTML page which I have. So for that I have this render template. So make sure you have this render template imported here, else it will not understand. this, and to inside this we are passing a HTML file. So that is the simple thing. We'll see what the index.html file basically consists. Okay, so this is just about the home page that we have. That is one function we have defined so far. Next, on the second page, what we'll have is we'll do the prediction. So prediction will be redirected to some other URL. So that is preceded with the root directory, and after that we have the predict. So that is the URL where the it takes or it executes this particular function which you see here, and the method that I'm passing is the post method. So basically what my idea is like to make user enter all the 31 different variables. I know it's a very tedious activity to do, but this is a small application to understand. So I'll make the user take all the 31 different variables. So I'll make him to enter onto my HTML web page, and I'll basically post this to my server or to a local host which is there internally in this. So there internally it will connect to your pickle file and it will do the prediction. So we have written all those things in the pickle file. So it is basically used for prediction. So it will do calculate all the values, take in an array, it will give you the result. So that is the basic ideology of this in a nutshell. So if I want to describe this, so this is the another function, that is the predict function. And in this I have init features, that is the initial features that I have. So in this what I do is I do a list comprehension. So here what I do is I write a eval for x. So we know eval for x is basically used to identify the different data types that we have. So since I have mentioned like most of the values are floating point values, if tomorrow there are some truncations done, and if by chance there exists a integer value, or if tomorrow if you import any new data set, and if that contains yes or no or boolean columns true false, so in that case then it should identify or it should not throw any error. So instead of putting or standardizing to or limiting to only one data type, I have put the eval method, and for each value in that x, I will pass that to request.form.values. So this request is nothing but this request that we have put here or that we have imported, and it will be passed to values which will return an iterator. So we know what is an iterator, we have discussed that, and it will be all given to the init feature. So the resultant that you get is a list. Then we wrap this to an array uh, below. Down the line we'll see where it is actually used. So in the final features what we have is we pass that list to np.array, and the resultant to this is a list. So internally it will be stored as an array. So what we were doing initially in the Colab notebook, that is we passed an array and we got the result as an array as a prediction. So similar thing you do in this way, that is by using list comprehension it becomes easy and you need not write many lines of code. And then finally we do the prediction. So we use the results dot predict, and instead of writing the np.array dot predict, and we are not passing any values, and since final features consist all the values, that is a flattened array of all the values, it everything will be stored in prediction. So prediction now consists of all the features after identifying what is the data type. So this will also work in runtime if you connect this to real time also. So it should work. And then what I do is I do the output. So whatever output is there, it will be a float value or int value, or dependent upon how it is being worked, or if there are new data frames or columns that is added tomorrow, or if they identify any new predictor variables that can better contribute to your model prediction, then it can dynamically change this. So whenever you rebuild the application, it will keeps on updating by itself. So to this, from NumPy, I have a method that is round, and this prediction that we get here, I will predict the first value, that is 0 stands for the two parts. So basically, when we saw the total cases when it predicted, it was a very large number. So one part consists of the integer and the other part consisted of the floating point. So we are interested in getting the integer part, but the floating part keeps on changing. So that is an approximation. So for approximation, we are rounding it to two integers after that, not all the integer values we want to get, but just by looking at the integer value, we'll get to know like whether our model is predicting or not. Let it be any model, there will be some kind of error that is introduced, and it should be there. So not everything can be made perfect from end to end. So we are introducing some kind of error in this. So that's not an error, just for a truncation, or if your system, underlying system, is not able to print a huge chunk of values, it has to be truncated somewhere in between, else it will show some rendering or other kind of errors. So for limiting to that, we are writing this in this way. Okay, and then finally we are again rendering this. So just mind you, for every definition or every function which you make, that is by app.route or on the HTML page, you have to render the result on that particular page. So on the home page, I will have the index HTML, and on the prediction page, that is after entering the values, I will have another page, that is the predict, and to predict, I will have this index HTML. So it's it will be a static page, but to that I will have some text that is entered. So that is a prediction test text. So it will display the total cases are approximately around, and this is nothing but we have seen this, that is a replacement operator. So it will replace with the value which is there, or which you give to the system or on the browser to the interface, and then it will finally return this. And then at the down, this line is important, else your app will not run. So this is again a syntax for object oriented concept. So uh, this is a main method. So in Java, if you know, like you have public static void main, string args, throws IO exception, you have so and so things. So for initializing the app, or from where the app runs, you have to write this underscore underscore name is equal to main. So by this, the compiler understands that this is the main method, and inside that I'll basically call our run method. So one way is to manually do this, like on the console or on the terminal or on the command prompt, you can type python and name of the file .py. You can do in that way, or you can click this run python file in the terminal, which you can see on the top right corner. So in run method, this is the description of what the method is. So just keep in mind that this particular application runs on a local development server. So this is not advised to deploy on a production server. So there you have to keep in mind about different things depending upon how the different data scientists they do the discussions, and finally you migrate it to different server and do that. But here, just for a demonstration purpose, we'll be doing this, and inside this I'm passing debug is equal to true. So debug is nothing but for populating the logs. If there are any logs while deployment onto the server, you want to get to know where it is getting uh, stuck while deploying. Okay, so till if this is understood, then we'll understand what is there in our index.html file. So don't worry, this is not a big index.html file, just you have to reuse the code one after the other, not copy paste. You should not ideally say copy paste, you have to use the word reuse. Okay, so this is not a new thing. So what I have done here is this is a basic template, that is HTML template you can get from internet, but make sure it is okay. The tags, closings, and all the headers, everything is there. So that is W3C, that is Worldwide 3 Consortium. So according to them, you have to put this. Else, what happens is, if you tend to use different browsers apart from Google Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox, or if you use Safari or any other browser, due to some issues, or if the browser is not updated, then it will not display the web page properly. So make sure you conform to the W3C standard itself. So I have this boilerplate code, and these are some title, and these are some descriptive things. These are the link, and for doing the CSS and all those. So this is the basic HTML file, and if you want to have a CSS extension style sheet, or if you want to make it more dynamic, you can add Bootstrap. Then you can put some uh, animation contents and so on. So that is the decorations that you do to this, but this is the basic skeleton of this. And here my head ends, and inside this body, what I'll have is, I have a login class. So that basically it's for designing forms which are there in HTML. So there is a section in HTML called as HTML forms, and inside this, the name of this particular page that I will have is predict cases, and this name is the name that what I'll be seeing on my uh, browser, or what the name of my tab will be. So that is pandemic cases predictor. And inside this, what you need to understand, this is the form. So what we want to do is, since we have seen here that it will take some input from the user and it will post. So what it will post is, it will post to this predictor class. So the action that we will be using is, it is URL underscore for. So this is another library or method which are or which is present inside your Flask framework. So it will do the prediction. So what name you have given here, that is, here I have written predict, so that is in accordance with this method. So whatever name you have written here, you have to give that same name here. So this is something that you see, that is in double curly braces. What you put, this is for dynamic content rendering, which is there in HTML, and the method that you give is post. So make sure you have to put the method post and not the get. So you are not retrieving any variables, instead you are passing this onto server. So that signifies by this methods is equal to post. And inside this, what I have written is just like all the 31 different variables. Corresponding to that, I have 31 different input fields. So if I want to show this to you, uh, it will have the type text, the new cases, enter new cases per day, and it's a required field. Because I have to keep this, else the user will not understand which is the required field and which is not the required. And if he feels like, or if he feels boring to enter some of the fields, then the model will also feel boring for prediction. So that is the same thing. So that's why I've kept required, and there are some placeholders. This is a boilerplate code. I've just reused this again and again, corresponding to the number of variables. And finally, to this I have a button, that is a submit button. So to this I have a class, that is this is a predefined class which is there in HTML, and the name of the button that I'm putting is score. So you can put any name, you can put predict, you can put accuracy, or you can put any display or anything like that. So I have put the name as score, and this is my form tag ends. And just mind you, all these things should be written inside the form tag. And after this I have put two breaks, that is line break which is there. And here what I write is, that is the value that I'm going to display or show to the user. So this is the dynamic rendering. This here will go here, or when the browser understands that it has to get this value. So this is what it will do is, URL for will be redirected to your app.py. It will go here. So going to the root directory is by default. Then after that it will go to the predict. It will do all the computations, and then what result you will get, that you basically get in this particular position. So prediction underscore test is nothing but this thing, that is the rendering after you hit the predict page. So in this what you get is, it will display the total number of cases are approximately around, and this, since the replacement operator, it will change every time you change the predictor variables, and it will give you dynamic output every time. Okay, so this is how it is intended to work. And then I have finally closed the div tag, uh, then body tag and HTML tag. So this is the basic two files. That is one of the main application, that is a web application built on Flask, and it's supporting index.html. So this is the basic thing. When you design any web application, you need to have one main application, and to supporting to that for web content, you need to have a index page. Then you can put some base files supporting to this index page for dynamic content rendering, or for other restructuring, or for if there are any other linkings which are there, so that is embedding. So for embedding you have different syntax to write. So that is basically called as Jinja 2 syntax. So this syntax is used for template inheritance. So here what I did is, so whenever you have such kind of files, or especially HTML files or CSS files or any styling files which you have, or even if you have JavaScript or Node.js, Vue.js, or even React.js files, what you do is you keep these files on a separate directory, else it will all be or it will be cluttered. So you won't understand how the correlation of different files are. So that will all be a mess. So especially in project management, these things are made very crucial, because everything you have to keep in separate directory. So for that I have a folder that is templates, and inside this templates I have kept the index.html. so if you have any other files which are dependent on index.html, like base html or base 1, base 2, so you can put under this, or even the CSS file, that is the main.css file, that is for style sheet. I have not considered in this application. So you can put everything in this, and if you want to see how it is basically looks inside this, so this is my Flask application, and inside this I have my uh, regression application. So it should reside outside your that is, it should be outside your templates, and inside the template what you have is, you have your index HTML. So this is the directory of how it should be. Next we'll see how we can basically run this particular application. So one thing that is VNV. So for basically running this web application, what you need to have is a virtual environment. Since you cannot put on a company server or anywhere else, what you need to have is, you need to have a local setup where you can run this, that is on a virtual environment, or in database it's called as a wizard. So you can use any of these things to run this. So here I have considered a uh, that is a wizard or a virtual environment. So how do you invoke the terminal? So here you can go and you can create a new terminal, or from your keyboard you can click Control tilde. So that will basically pop a terminal for you. So I'll basically create a new terminal itself. So I'll click on this Control tilde. So this is the terminal that you get to see here, and right now I'll just deactivate my environment. So just this is one option. When you invoke this every time, you can change the default shell that you want to project. So one way, like, you can click here, select default. You can see on the top, you can either choose or run this via command prompt, or by using Windows PowerShell, or by using Git Bash. If you are comfortable with any of this, you can go with that. So I will be demonstrating this via command prompt. So first thing that you need to do is you need to import all the different libraries which you have used in your uh, file or the Flask application. So one thing is, like, you can do pip3. So uh, this is the way you can install. You can write pip3 install and name of the file, that is numpy, and all the other libraries which you have used, that is statsmodels.api and Flask and Pickle. So it is dependent on what application you build. So every time, if you have any library created from the scratch, or user created libraries by using data structures, or any predefined libraries like sklearn or scikit-learn, you have to put this onto your uh, environment, or to this particular Visual Code Studio, else it will not understand. Okay, so that is the one thing that you have to do when you uh, create your virtual environment, or when you do the deployment. So I have done all those things for my model building, or for building this web application. Now after this, what you need to do is, once you have installed all the libraries which are relevant to your web application, uh, you need to create a virtual environment. So creating a virtual environment is done via this way. It takes some time. So you can install virtual environment by pip3 install user virtual environment. So this is the way, or this is the page that is from where you can do this, that is Stack Overflow. So it is loading. So from here, once you enter this, it will install the virtual environment to your system, and then you need to activate this. So for activation, you have different ways to do this. So I have this. Once that page is loaded, I'll show you, or I'll put the link in the description. You can check this. So now once the virtual environment is installed onto your Visual Studio, what you need to do is, uh, it will be residing inside your Flask app, so that you can see from the root directory, or the directory tree. You can see here, that is the venv, and inside this venv, what you have is, if you go, you have these many files, that is lib scripts, git ignore, and the pyvnv.configuration file. So if you go inside the scripts, you have different pyd files, and there are some shell files and bad files. What you need to have is, you need to have this activate.bat file. So bat file is nothing but a Windows batch file which have already some predefined commands which are used for doing some activity or some process when you double click. So that is for Windows. So basically you need to have this activate.bat. If you are using any some other operating system like Linux or Mac, then there is a different way by which you can invoke this activate.bat. So here what I do is, so this is the web page. So you install this in this way, that is pip install. So pip is an older version. Since I have updated my pip package to the newer version, I have pip3 install hyphen hyphen user virtual environment. So this will install the virtual environment to your Flask setup, and this is for creating, this is for installing, and to activate, since I have mentioned your first you have to activate your virtual environment after you install. So the activate.bat file resides inside the script. So what you need to do is, now since you are in the Flask app directory, so you have to navigate this to venv. So you now are in the venv, and in this venv you have to go to scripts. So in scripts you will call activate.bat. So what thing you can observe is, here before your path where the window is, or like your directory is, you can see a vn. This means like your virtual environment is active or you are into the virtual environment. So a common difference is like you were not in the virtual environment, now you are in the virtual environment, or you are executing all the commands provided you are in the virtual environment. So that is the common difference. So now I'll just pop this up so that you can see this what the things are. So uh, now what we do is, since we have activated this, we have to go back, that is we do cd dot dot and cd dot dot. So now in the Flask app, if you go to this, that is now we are here, that is Flask app, and here we have this regressor app.py. So now we will run this. So for running, we'll simply write Python. So this is how you run the Python files via command line. So you write Python rigor app.py. So if everything is correct, I'll just enter. It will take some time for connecting this Python file to your virtual environment, and it will be up in some time. The main thing that you have to keep in mind, that the logs that it is producing, so there will be some warnings, and there will be some things that you need to keep in mind, and where it actually runs. So this is the IP on which it basically runs. So that is 127.0.0.1, and the port which you have is 5000. So that is where it basically runs. So that was a static thing that I've shown. Uh, it will take some more time dependent upon your internet connection, and also it depends upon the machine. My machine is little slow in this case, so I apologize for the time it takes to load. Okay, so once it loads, what you can see is, you will have this. So the title name that we got, that is the pandemic cases predictor. Okay, and this is the name, that is the heading, that is predict cases, and these are the 31 different fields that you use for your model prediction. And then finally you have a score button, it will give you the score. So now since it has started, so first what you see is serving Flask app, and the name of the app that you see, that is a Regor app, and it's in a lazy loading state. The environment is production. So and there is a warning, this is a development server, do not use in a production deployment, because in production there are some things that you need to keep in mind, or there are some dependency files while collaborating with different teams like testing teams or some DevOps teams. So you need to have that files in collaboration when you do this. So that's why this warning is there. And you can see the debug mode is on, and restarting with stat and debugger is now active. Then you have a pin, so that can uniquely identify or in the transaction logs if something goes wrong, how you would identify that which application is running. So as a unique identifier you have this debugger pin, and now it is running on this HTTP 127.0.0.1, and the port on which it is running is 5000. So if I go here and I have already put these values, so putting these values, it requires some amount of time and patience, because if you just miss just a small value, then it will throw error and it will not predict. So that's why I did this. So and if I click score here, so now you can see the URL where it is going, that is a predict, and you can see the total cases are approximately around this much. There are some values after 9 months, but we are only just truncating to the two values or two decimal places after that, and this is the number that we are exactly getting when we ran our model. So from the beginning, that is on the script, after pickling and unpickling, we are getting the same, and now our web application is also running perfectly. You can change different values, and you can test whether it is predicting correctly or not. So this is a very simple web application. You might see this web application boring. So I don't deny with that, because I have not done any CSS style sheet or anything like that. And moreover, what I have not done in this is like some negative testing. So if I enter some negative values, obviously my intuition is it won't run and it will throw error. So I have not done any negative testing. So you can train your model for handling negative testing, missing values, or you can dynamically change the response if user did some tweaks in the values, or if he has entered some values blank or something like that, then you can give the appropriate error response or message, or indicating which field is blank or which are required. So you can do that kind of fine tuning to your model before doing this. So this was to show like how your life cycle of your machine learning model is, where it actually fits, or where in the organization or where in the environment actually fits, and what all things you should basically know for this. So these are just a small thing which you should know, but there are things after this also that you should know, but I have a limitation to show all of those, but this is a basic idea. So then basically it will show some error. So errors are logs which you can see. So now since this is on the server and it's up and running, this is the time and the date, and you have the post method as a resultant of the predictor variables that you have put to this, and it's HTTP 200 is a success response, that is okay. So you can do the debugging where the response is going and how the request is getting connected and so and so. So this is just one simple index HTML file. If you have any other HTML files, it will do the redirection. So for that you need different coding techniques for doing in Flask. Now my some ideas, or like what my model actually does in this particular case. So this model is supposed to predict the total number of cases in accordance with the data set it has loaded. So what it cannot do is it cannot do the forecasting, means provided you have put all these features and you have identified three or more features, including time dependent predictor variable. Since we have discarded date from this, you can say one such entity for determining or doing forecasting is date, but date alone won't suffice. You have to do some other coding in this. The model, uh, for that also, linear regression alone won't suffice. You have to do time series model. For time series model, you need to use ARMA model or ARIMA model for doing that. That is forecasting and prediction, which involves time series. Then by some tweaks, you can do the forecasting. Now, since today is the 19th of October, uh, if you have the records or data set or the entries till today, you can predict what will be the cases uh, tomorrow, just an approximate. So if you are successful in that, that means you are doing some good work in machine learning. So that is my intuition regarding this, but this is a very small model. Just if your team is there and if they are saying some values, and if you want to predict something, instead of going through Excel files or some other project management tools, your model will be simply giving you the number, like what will be the total number of cases. So this is a workflow of your model building. So you did EDA, you did the quality checks, you did the model building, and now you have your model running on a local host. So but still this model is with you. So this is not still applicable to, or it's not deployed to everyone. So not everyone in the world can access this. So for doing that, what you need to do is you need to host this on a cloud deployment. So there you have different services, like you can use the platform as a service, and then for doing that you have Google Cloud Platform, GCP. So that comes on a paid version for deploying your models. Then you have Windows, Microsoft Windows, Azure. Then you have the Amazon AWS, and there is one free cloud provider where you can put all of these things and you can run your application. That is called as Heroku. So we'll be later seeing how we can deploy this model through Git, that is GitHub, and we can put onto Heroku and make it applicable for everyone. So if you are at any place of the world, then you can take this model and you can put different parameters, and you can check what are the total number of cases. You can do that thing. So that will be covering in some other videos. So much effort is required in doing that. So that's all for today's video. So hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any doubts or queries regarding these things, and if you have not understood anything regarding any of the commands or any of the syntaxes while writing